Policing sure ain't what it used to be. In a society transformed by technology, with increasingly distrustful citizens and complaints about the highest policing costs in Canada, times are changing. What should 21st century policing look like? Ontario is working on that in part by rewriting the Police Services Act, and Yasir Naqvi, the minister responsible, has been on a listening tour to find out what to do. He joins us now for more, so let's welcome Yasir Naqvi, the Liberal MPP for Ottawa Centre and Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services, here to TVO. Nice to see you again, Minister.
Thank you.
So tell us, why is this Police Services Act in need of rewriting in your view?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to remember that the last time Police Services Act was written was in 1990. That was over 25 years ago. The world has changed since Bob Rae and his government wrote that piece of legislation. Now, the current Police Services Act has done a very good job in terms of making Ontario one of the safest jurisdictions in North America. Our crime rates continues to come down. But the world has changed. There's elements like technology, crimes like internet and child exploitation. You've got police dealing with people with vulnerable issues such as mental health and addiction. So we feel very strongly that we need to modernize the Police Services Act and be ready for the next set of challenges.
So you're out there, you're holding lots of public hearings, 19, I think, public consultations around the province. What are you hearing so far?
Well, so our public consultations are going very well. We've got incredible turnout of individuals coming from all backgrounds to these meetings. We also have an online document and feedback that we're receiving. We have received about 1,500 feedback responses up to now. And the conversation is taking place on a couple of fronts. One is around how do we bring in the principles around community safety and crime prevention in a policing context. We know that we need to change the model of policing from that which is reactive and enforcement-driven to one that is proactive and community-focused. So there is a substantive conversation and ideas coming forward as to how we do that. Second big area is a role of a police officer in 21st century. Police officers very much have become the default for all social issues right now in our society, and that probably speaks to the cost element as well. How can we ensure that police is working more effectively with other partners like in education and healthcare and social services to provide services? And the last piece that comes often is around governance issues, civilian governance, and how can we strengthen oversight of police in the model.
Sorry, let me pick up on the cost, because I'll tell you, whenever we take this program on the road and we go to various places around Ontario, particularly Northern Ontario or perhaps parts of rural Ontario, I hear about cost all the time. The capital city's police force now costs $1 billion a year. Places outside the capital city, smaller municipalities complaining that they can't afford the arbitrated increases that often come as a result of collective bargaining. Is there anything you can do about making policing more affordable away from the capital city?
I think what we need to do, and that's a big crux of what we're doing in terms of by creating a strategy for a safer Ontario, is that we need to reduce the demand for policing. If you make sure that police gets to focus on doing what police is trained to do, that is to solve crimes serious crimes, or prevent crimes from happening, then we really would start seeing reducing the demand in policing. The other important way is to make sure that we are focusing more on crime prevention, more on community development, and by going to a model of community safety and well-being plans done at the local level, which are community-focused, which are led by evidence and are outcome-driven, is going to result in more efficient use of resources.
That seems to make perfect sense, except that if you're a city councillor in Timmins right now and you've just got an arbitration award which is giving your police service, I don't know what, a 3.5% raise, and you're trying to keep property taxes to 0 or 1% increase, and this happens year after year after year after year, what do you do? Well,
I mean, that's a labor relations issue, and something as former Minister of Labor I have dealt with, and I know my colleague Kevin Flynn is dealing with that issue around arbitration. And we have to be mindful and respectful of the labor laws in that respect. My responsibility is to find ways, is how do we provide better policing, policing that is done in complement of the community and all the other services that are provided, and the right response at the right time by the right service provider.
Let's talk about that some more, because you pointed out in an earlier answer, police officers in many circumstances now are in a bit, they're like social workers now, right? They're dealing with mental health issues, they're dealing with people in distress. Should there be significantly more training for police officers in conjunction with social workers, healthcare workers, mental health workers? Do you need to do more of that?
We have to do more of that, and that's the model we're looking at. Give you a very good example, Hamilton. Hamilton Police Services did a pilot, which is now a permanent program for them, where they paired a police officer with a mental health worker. So when those 911 phone calls dealing with somebody in mental health crisis comes in, you don't send a police cruiser with police officers with the police training to do the police response. You send a police cruiser with a police officer and a mental health worker to the situation. And I did a ride along with them, so I actually got to witness it firsthand, where the police officer is responsible to make sure that the scene is safe, but the mental health worker did his job in that circumstance, which is to stabilize the individual, make a determination, and then take the next steps. And in that particular case, they decided to take the individual to St. Joseph's Hospital.
Did you watch all this?
I was right there.
You were there?
I was there. I went to the hospital.
How did it resolve itself?
It resolved itself in a sense that the person was a schizophrenic, was living in a rooming house, was endangering the others because she lit some of her undergarments, so they felt that they have to take her to the hospital. And they did take her to the hospital. And the great thing there was that they have protocols established with the hospital, so the police officer and mental health worker did not sit there for 4 hours in the ER. They were actually hand over that individual to the appropriate individual, passed on their notes, and off they went to their merry way.
And there was no escalation.
There was
along
no
the way?
escalation. It was done in a very peaceful, in a calm way. I mean, it was very fascinating to watch that. So we have examples like these that demonstrate that if you have the right individuals dealing with the right kind of scenarios, not only you provide a better response to that individual who's going through a vulnerable moment due to any circumstance, but it has a significant impact on better policing, better community building, and cost savings as well.
Sadly, it obviously doesn't always work out that way. We know the examples, Sami Yatim, Andrew Loku. Those are only the most recent high-profile examples in this community. And it raises a question about cameras. Cameras on cops. What do you think about that idea?
Well, we have to look at technological solutions, and that's part of the conversation we're having. We cannot turn away from technology.
Okay. Do you have a view on it, though?
I personally, watching very carefully the pilot that Toronto Police Services is doing. The ministry is involved in that. The Privacy Commissioner is involved in that as well. I think that those kind of things are the way to the future, and we have to pay serious consideration to them. Speaking
of pay, you know that if you green light cameras on police officers' bodies, the municipality is going to want more money to deal with that. You prepared to do that?
Well, these are the conversations we're having. I mean, one of the things that we need to look at, for example, the province gives hundreds of millions of dollars for policing purposes to police services. They come all in their separate envelopes, in their silos, and you're not allowed to take a dollar from here to there. One of the things that we want to do is get rid of that and actually say to police services, we will define the outcome, which is safer communities. You develop a plan along with the community in terms of how you accomplish it, and you decide how you want to use that dollars, right? Let's enable local communities to come up with the planning based on evidence in terms of the challenges they have, and then enable them to do so. So that's an approach that is part of consideration. All of this that I'm speaking of, Steve, is not theoretical. We have been actually doing pilots across the province on community safety and well-being plans, on situation tables, in urban centers like Toronto, in rural communities like North Bay, in Aboriginal communities like Rama First Nation. And the data that's coming in is very encouraging, and that's why we're doing the work we're doing right now.
You mentioned Aboriginal people in that answer, and I want to pick up on that. I guess a month or two ago, the new Prime Minister of Canada said there is I think his words were, a pervasive culture in police services, among other agencies in this country, that has led to actions that make Indigenous people feel less valued. And I wonder what you have up your sleeve to change that.
So First Nations policing is a very important part of the conversation. We have started work with our First Nations communities to ensure that we have culturally sensitive First Nations led policing in those communities. There's obviously a role for the federal government, and I've had very good positive conversations with Minister Goodale, the Minister of Public Safety, on that. And part of our strategy for Safer Ontario is ensuring that we modernize First Nations policing. We've got a pretty good roadmap with the Ipperwash inquiry. Justice Linden did the work on that. It goes back to 2007.
It's a long time ago now.
Exactly.
Yep.
And it's time that we follow through by working along with our First Nations partners, and we're actually having some very good conversations with them.
Good conversations, but one does wonder if there are too many decades, if not centuries, of mistrust that have built up that will really prevent you from making the kind of progress you need to make. What do you think?
Well, I think this is a watershed moment with the work that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission has done. The kind of positive relationships that Premier Wynne have been able to build with First Nations communities, the kind of work that Prime Minister Trudeau has started. I think this is the moment, this is the time that we reconcile from the things that had done in the past and focus on the future. I'm finding an incredible positive working relationship with First Nations leaders, people that I get to work with, like the Regional Chief Isidore Day or Grand Chief of NAN, Alvin Fiddler. We need to really build on that and bring some concrete changes.
I want to ask you about carding, because your ministry just recently released some guidelines that prohibit carding in the way that it was practiced in the past. Street checks, call them what you will. They disproportionately targeted people of color, and you and the government and, of course, many community leaders said that's got to stop. You made that decision, and yet we still see police service boards, we still see chiefs of police, we still see officers across the province who have said, that's all well and good, but it works for us and we're going to continue to do it. So what's the value of your decision?
Well, the value of my decision is that it is a regulation, which is the law under the Police Services Act, and is enforceable to all police services and police services boards across the province.
You're going to fire a chief if the chief doesn't fall into line?
We have made changes to the regulation dealing with misconduct as well. So
to what?
If you don't comply with that regulation, then yes, you can lose your job. It is enforceable piece. It's not a directive. It's not a guideline. It's a regulation. And we were very deliberate in using a legal instrument that has the force of law behind it. We have done extensive consultations, and in order to build kind of policing that ensure that there's trust and respect between the police and the communities they serve, because they are one and the same, we need to make sure that practices like carding, which was taking place, that is arbitrary and race-based collection of personal information, should stop, and we have a law now that says it should happen.
And you are ready for the showdown that will take place when some chief out there says, you know what, it's an important tool for us, and we're going to continue doing it.
Well, with all due respect, the chiefs, I've had worked with them very closely. They are professionals. They know what the law is, and I'm confident that they will comply with it, and I have that assurance from that. We've given them till July the 1st for both police services boards and police chiefs to come up with their policies and procedures consistent with the regulation. I am responsible to do the same thing for the Ontario Provincial Police as the Minister for Community Safety, and we will be doing that as well. And then the real key thing, Stephen, in this going to be is the training. We're developing the training curriculum. We have an expert advisory panel of community leaders who will help the Ontario Police College and develop the training. And over the summer and fall, police officers will be trained across the province, because I believe this is a very important step in changing that relationship and building trust and respect between the community and the police.
You know, this group, Black Lives Matter, has said, that's all well and good. Well, I'm not sure they've said this. They have said, if you can bring an end to carding going forward, okay, but let's also keep in mind that there are years of data that the police have already collected on members of their community, and they want that information to be expunged from the record. Will you force that to take place?
Well, obviously the regulation applies prospectively, and we have outlined very clear rules as to what happens, that information that is improperly collected moving forward, and that information that's properly collected, and after some certain years, where does it go?
I get that. They're talking about stuff already collected.
So what I'm hoping that when it comes to legacy data, as is referred to, the police services boards and chiefs will make the right decision, and at the least will put them in a restricted database so that it's not accessible. I am responsible, as I mentioned, as the Minister of Community Safety, to develop the policy for the OPP, and I plan to lead by example.
What does that mean?
I plan to have in our policy state that all the legacy data that's in OPP's control that be put in the restricted database.
But not expunged.
There's a legal issue around expunging, because just in case if there is a legal dispute or you need it as evidence for some challenge, constitutional otherwise, you need to have that information available from an evidentiary point of view. So the legal advice is that you take it away from the general database and put it in restricted database. Only the commissioner will have access to it, and only in very, very strict circumstances, pretty much by a court order, you can take information out.
Okay, got a few minutes left here. Let's bring this up. I'm not sure there's a guy out there who's put this issue more on the public's radar than Desmond Cole, who writes a column every week in the Toronto Star and had that Toronto Life piece written about his life, which was really quite an eye-opener. Here's what he wrote last October in the Star. It took too long for the province to object to carding. It will be many months before the new regulations are critiqued, modified, and passed. Even then, it will be up to local police services boards, many of whom have shown no interest in stopping carding, to make the proposed changes real. But carding is just an ugly manifestation of the dominant social belief that blacks and other marginalized people need to be kept in line with aggression, dominance, and disrespect. That's his view. What's your response to that?
Well, you know, in order for us to have successful societies, safe societies, we need to make sure that there's trust and respect between the police and the communities they serve. If that kind of sentiment exists, then we have a lot of work to do. I've had the chance to work with Desmond Cole on these carding issues, and I very much appreciate the passion he brings to this. And I really feel strongly that I think we have started turning the page when it comes to the regulations we did on carding, the work we're doing in terms of modernizing policing, in terms of how policing should be done, and we have benefited from living in a safe society. Of course, there's more to be done, and I'm confident that we will be able to accomplish that by ensuring that we've got policing and a model of policing that is one of the best in North America.
I've got a minute left here, and I want to ask you a bit of a personal question, because my hunch is there are very high hopes that you will do right on this file, because you're a kid who wasn't born here, right? You came here as a teenager. Yeah. When I say you're a kid, not now, back then. Came here as a teenager from Pakistan. A visible minority who's probably had his share of unpleasant incidents here in the province. They think that ought to give you an added sensitivity to this issue. What can you tell them on that score? It's not about me. It is about the people that I am elected to serve. One of the most incredible experience for me was the consultations we did on carding. I got to hear lived experiences of a lot of people. That was moving, especially the young people who highlighted their life and this practice to be the normal. We live in Ontario, Canada, one of the best provinces and the best country in the world. That type of feeling cannot exist. So that's the responsibility I take. I think we have an incredible opportunity, and I have a premier who supports me and backs me on that, of ensuring that we have a model of policing in this province that respects every individual, respects every life, and really focuses on building safe communities, which is the goal for everyone who's raising a family or lives in this province, and I'm committed to doing the work. Understood. That's Yasir Naqvi, the MPP Ottawa Centre, the Minister of Community Safety and Correctional Services. We thank you for coming into TVO tonight. Thank you very much.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.